Since you can't be live to greet new viewers,
Ah. Hello, friends, and welcome back to the Popcast. Whenever you're listening to this, whether it be live or a VOD, Twitch or YouTube, while you're standing in line to cast your vote like my wife and I did for an hour and 36 minutes yesterday, forgetting to take off your Splatfest tee while playing in a tournament, as several of you did over the weekend, asking Twitter randos to tell you what div they think you are, whatever it is that you're doing right now. I appreciate you taking the time out of your day to listen to this, unless I don't. Quick correction from last week. Accuracy is something I kind of want to do correctly as a part of this podcast series. A lot of this stuff is just my opinion, but if I state something as a fact that's wrong, I want to get that right. So one thing I did say, Splatter Swim was the first team to go 10-0 in a low-wing tournament. That is not true. Turns out they went 11-0. Turns out math is a little bit difficult. 6 plus 5 does not actually equal 10. And actually, they're not even the first team to go 10-0. Last Chance went 10-0 back in September, even though they ended up losing the tournament. So Splatter Swim, the first team ever to go undefeated with 11 matches, wins, and 0 losses. That's not something they pointed out to me. That's something I caught myself when I realized, wait a minute, if you go undefeated from the winners bracket and grand finals, you technically win 5 games, not 4. So how about that? When you guys turn 30, you'll forget how to do math too, so don't worry about it. Today, I will be recapping the 4th Xanadu tournament series that happened on Halloween and talking with Yeet, the newest member of the Splatoon amateur circuit staff, which got announced this past week. To return in the mid-January. I'll be asking a lot of questions that wasn't initially covered in the announcement post that they did when they announced that SAC was coming back. So I sent them a long, lengthy list of questions that I had, and they didn't reject any of them. So we're gonna get a lot of information, supposedly, when we do this interview about this upcoming SAC season in a couple of months. So very excited about that. But before we get into all that, let's cover some quick news. As I check something real quick. Okay. We got a lot of tournaments coming up for the lower level community. 2 coming up this weekend. First off, we have Checkpoint 1 is hosting their second in-house tourney. That is going to be this Saturday, the 7th of November. I believe this was kind of like Launch Point's tournament, except it's more even lower skill level than that. You will see some names play in this tournament that you recognize from things like Launch Point and Low Ink, but there'll be a lot more teams that are traditionally considered casual, like the S plus on down kind of crowd. So this is truly the lowest of the lower level, which is great because there's usually nothing for those guys to do except to sign up for Low Ink and go 0-6. So there's a great tournament for those guys to kind of build themselves up. This, I believe registration for this was already closed. I think this is one of those things where a week out they shut down registration so they can put teams together from free agents or whoever just signs up and just goes from there. Interesting thing of note, this one will be streamed by IPL. I don't know if IPL is fully taken over this tournament or if we're just offering help or not. Regardless, I will be commentating the top cut of this one, assuming I get home in time from work. For teams not playing in Checkpoint 1, Little Squid League 8 is going on at the exact same time and day. Saturday, November the 7th at 12 p.m. Eastern Time. I am going to link the battle files for that in chat. And I will also post it in the YouTube description. You think LSL got canceled? But they just announced it. How could they? And it's still up on Battlefy. They seriously canceled that? They announced it like 2 days ago. Is it gonna... Okay, well, disregard that then. Apparently, they canceled it because of Checkpoint. Okay, so there's probably just going to be rescheduled at a later date. Interesting. Okay, so when I first saw... I knew they were both going on at the same time, but my thought was, well... There's already 6 teams signed up for this Little Squid League, so my thought was, oh well, they could just get away with doing it at the same time, but I guess not. Well, that's kind of another topic I was going to get at later. Time to go to Midway. Oh, is Midway going on at the same time as well? But I mean, like, teams that play in Little Squid League aren't going to play in Midway. Those are like so completely unrelated from each other. Or maybe Splat Force is going to play in Midway. Maybe that's why. Regardless, I'll keep an eye out for when the next Little Squid League actually is. Apparently, it is not this upcoming weekend, like originally thought. Okay, so all this going on is Checkpoint 1 this upcoming weekend. The weekend after that, a new tournament coming out, the Minnow Cup. This is going to be on Saturday, November the 11th at 1 p.m. Eastern Time. This tournament, one of the TOs for this is downstairs right now. So I'm confident this one is actually going to happen. And there's the link for that. This is going to be the same skill level that you would typically find in low ink, the Div 4 on down. What is Div 4 these days? I have no idea. You don't either. But the twist about this tournament is that it's going to be just focusing on one mode every tournament. So I believe this is going to be a monthly thing. You're on staff for the Minnow Cup? Seriously? It's at the 14th? No. The 11th month of the year. So 11/14. I might have said the month instead of the date. But yes, it is not this upcoming Saturday, but next Saturday. Anyways, it is Tower Control this month. For those of you who are old enough in the Splatoon community to remember those old BNS days, that tournament where, if you're listening to this, you probably were excited if you just got 2 wins in that entire tournament. Spoiler, 2020 has 14 months. Why not? Let's. It's been such a fun 10 months up to this point. But this is basically, in my mind, going to be a lower level version of the old BNS days, which a lot of people found very exciting. I don't know what the next mode is going to be after that, but I'm trying not to be involved in the Minnow Cup. For those of you who are married or are considering getting married, here's a quick pro tip for you. Give yourself space. allow each other to have space. You don't have to be doing the same exact thing as your spouse all the time. And maybe that's not for everybody. Believe it or not, I'm a very introverted person. So sometimes I just need to hide whenever, especially when I come home from work. Sometimes I just need to hide in my bed for 30 minutes without any human interaction at all. So when your wife is doing a new tournament series, if she never comes to you for help, don't offer your help. Just let them do their thing and cover it like you normally would on your own podcast series, which you guys all have, I'm sure. Last little bit of news here. We got a patch Tuesday, kind of seemingly out of nowhere. It was just assumed that it was just coming in for the Splatfest, which was expected. I mean, we usually get like a quick patch just for them to upload Splatfest or whatever. But we also got this new updated ranked mode thing, which was interesting. So now it looks like Missing No is in everybody's lobby. You don't know who you're playing with or against until the game actually spawns up and starts, which is just fine. That doesn't bother me. It doesn't enhance the experience or take away from it. Apparently, that was put in because top level players were trying to avoid each other or something, or trying to or win trading or whatever. So I guess this fixes an issue that people were having, which sucks that we need to come up with issues or solutions to problems that don't have to exist, but jackasses run the world, and we have to come up with anti-jackass protocol to help fix things like that. There was a lot of people on Tuesday night playing the new ranked mode that was like, this isn't any different at all. I'm still top fragging and losing. And it's like, okay, chill out, people. First off, I'm pretty sure even though the ranking mode got updated, everything that you played last week is still using calculations from the old system, right? Because apparently it's supposed to do a better job of matching you up with people that are around your current power level or something like that. So let's give it a month. Let's see how November goes, and if November is a little bit different, then there you go. You can go back on Twitter and be like, "Oh, I was wrong," or you can be like, "I was right. Ranked mode's just as bad as it always is." Fine. If people want to complain about ranked mode, that's not groundbreaking news. We get it. It's you don't like it, you don't enjoy it. Fine. Go to Twitter and complain about it. Now, if you're a competitive player and you're worried about ranked mode, you're worried about the wrong thing. Ranked mode is just it's not the best way to improve your skills as a competitive player. I mean, it's better than nothing. The best thing for you to do is do pickup scrims or drafts or whatever people are calling them nowadays. But chill out on the ranked mode hate just for a little bit. Let's just see how November goes. I think it's just going to be fine. Unless it's not. Also, this is the only podcast series in Splatoon where the host will wear a dress one week and then come out the next and wear a suit. But if there is any consistency, it's that I'm always wearing nothing but underwear underneath the camera. So take solace in that. Before we get into the SAC interview with Yeet, we're going to cover the Xanadu Tourney real quick. And let me pull this up because I didn't look too much into it outside of a few things. First off, it was all in one day. It was 6 rounds. It was Swiss, and it led to a top 8 top cut. This tournament was basically old school low ink. And by old school, I mean March of this year old school, because that was the last time we saw this same kind of format. So those of you who complained about the 2-day system or the multiple brackets or whatever, the Xanadu tournament this past weekend is what low ink used to be. So those clinging to the glory days, here it was right here, and it's pretty decent. There was a lot of good matches in this tournament because we had a lot of alpha bracket teams that are coming off of the alpha bracket in October, and teams that have made alpha bracket in the past but haven't been a part of it recently. A few low ink champions were in this one, or maybe just one. The Gorillers. Okay, I think the Gorillers are the only low ink champion team that participated in this, but several runners up as well, with Persistence being here. So a lot of good teams in this lower level tournament. I see Wiggler Ahoy made an appearance. That's I guess that's kind of a preview of what the Xanadu tournament series is going to transition into the next time we see this tournament, and I'll get into that later based off the announcement that they did. But first off, let's look at Swiss, the matches of note. First off is ITAP 2-1 over Trinity. This is significant because these were two alpha bracket teams. And my question for ITAP has been, was that last low ink just a fluke, or is this what we should be expecting to see from ITAP in the future, which is them taking on traditional alpha bracket teams and finding ways to beat them? And the answer for this tournament was essentially yes. I mean, they played Trinity, which has made alpha brackets 2 times now, and ultimately found a way to get a win to start off the tournament. So a nice win there for ITAP, who eventually did make low ink as well. I dropped my pen. Let me awkwardly disappear. And we're back. Other matches of note. Deep Fried Octolings. Oh, excuse me. The Deep Fried Octolings 2-1 over Tooniverse. Tooniverse being the team that finished second in Gamma last month in low ink. The Deep Fried Octolings, a team I was excited about but didn't register, or did register and ultimately had to drop. Didn't play either way. So a very nice win there for the Deep Fried Octolings. This tournament did not have a stream, so unfortunately there was no opportunity for them to be on stream at all. It's going to happen at some point. Other matches of note. Trinity 2-1 over Ravenous Raccoons. I told you, this is why I think the ITAP win is good, because Trinity is a good team, and they proved it right here, beating Ravenous Raccoons, the team that finished 4th out of 100 teams in the last low ink. Trinity found a way to beat them 2-1. So Trinity proven themselves to be a pretty good team as well. Probably you could put them down as a consistent top cut team going into the future. At least that's what this win tells me here. Tyrant Inc. 2-1 over Sea Boys. Tyrant Inc. coming off a Little Squid League win last month, finding a way to make alpha brackets again the month in low ink. The following low ink after that Little Squid League 7 win, not to be confused with Little Squid League 8 that is not going on this weekend like I originally stated. But Sea Boys, I'll be talking more about them later because they went really deep into this tournament, into a excruciatingly long grand finals here. But before they got to that, Tyrant Inc. beat them. So a nice win for Tyrant Inc., who is once again kind of proving, like these other teams, that their performance in the past low ink was legit. They're getting these consistent wins here. So as I'm looking at this tournament, I'm starting to think, what kind of implications does it have in other tournaments in the lower level community? What it's telling me is that we're getting more and more teams that are getting up to this higher tier, this flirting with possibly winning low ink next month tier. We're getting a lot of teams that are getting stacked into that group there. Which means I'm going to be looking back at these matches when I have to do my top 10 for low ink, which is going to be in a couple of weeks due to Thanksgiving. And a 2-1 win over Sea Boys is definitely gonna pay some dividends in the future for Tyrant Inc. Enigma 2-1 over the Deep Fried Octolings. This one kind of surprised me, but Enigma. Not that Enigma won, but they beat a team like Deep Fried Octolings this early in their team's career. I think Enigma is going to be a really good team once they get some synergy under their belt. They got a really strong backliner, Cassie, who has been taking some time away from the game. So give Cassie a few weeks to shake some rust off, and you got a pretty solid anchor player there who can kind of create space for Allie and Jennifer to do the things that they do. So Enigma is a team to look out for in the future. I called them dummies for not signing up for the past low ink, but that was more so for just waiting till the last minute to do it rather than them not wanting to do it. So be interested to see what Enigma can do in the future. And they're gonna be a pretty experienced team heading into low ink because they're playing in a bunch of these other tournaments. My team played them in testing ground, so I got to see them firsthand. Obviously they're playing in the Xanadu tournament, so I would assume we're going to see more of Enigma heading into this next low ink, which is only going to make them stronger and pay more dividends for them down the road. There are a ton of other great matches of note, but I don't want to be here all day long because I got other things to take care of. I mean, the Swiss portion of this was just a really good tournament here. Persistence beating Sea Boys 2-1. Persistence beating Wiggler Ahoy 2-1. Citrus 2-1. Deep Fried Octolings. I mean, sometimes in low ink when I look over things, it's like, well, none of these matches are surprising because Team A is of course supposed to beat Team B. But we saw a lot of 2-1 results in this tournament. Again, this is a smaller tournament. Only 30 teams registered, but I believe it was 28 after people dropped. But for the 28 teams that signed up, they all seemed to be able to be in the same ballpark of each other somewhat. So a nice little tournament here. A few winners from Swiss. The Deep Fried Octolings. These guys went 3-3 with a notable win over Tooniverse. Once again, like I said, we didn't see these guys in the past low ink. Doesn't really matter because they're still signing up in other tournaments when they're available. And it seems like every single tournament they do, they finish 3-3 in Swiss, regardless of what the tournament is. I would be curious into seeing what the Deep Fried Octolings overall career team tournament record is. I wouldn't be surprised if it was dead even wins and losses. So a consistent team in Deep Fried Octolings. Hopefully we can see them get a fourth win at some point in one of these tourneys. Other winners from Swiss, Evening Chickens. These guys went 4-2 with key wins over Tooniverse and the Outcast Ninjas. The only team to beat Evening Chickens were the top two teams, West Broadway Grillers and Sea Boys, who I believe also beat them in Top Cut as well. Evening Chickens, the team that won beta bracket in low ink, beating Oblivion and doing it as the number 16 seed. So once again, they weren't even supposed to be in beta bracket technically. Found a way to slip in last minute and won the whole thing. So Evening Chickens following up that performance with a top 5 finish here in Swiss before getting eliminated in round 1 of Top Cut to the team who ultimately finished second. So nice performance from Evening Chickens. Also, I think I learned that the Evening Chickens are an EU team, which I found interesting, considering all their names are barbecue sauce and like honey hot sauce and ranch dressing and all. So being the ignorant American that I am, I assumed we were the only ones who consumed those types of fattening dishes on a regular basis. So I didn't know that Europeans were aware of those kinds of things. So congratulations to the EU, I guess, who apparently has access to barbecue sauce and buffalo sauce and all that stuff. Unless they're not. My last winner from Swiss give me Trinity, like I said, beating the Raccoons and Tooniverse, going 4-2 overall. One of their wins did come from them getting a bye, which is worth mentioning. One team actually only got 2 wins in this tournament, and one of them was because of a bye, and the other is because the team dropped in the middle of the set they played against them, which is unfortunate. That's kind of the drawback to tournaments when an even or an odd number of teams sign up. Uh, Especially when it's in the lower portion. In low ink, you can kind of get away with having a bye because there's 100 teams, and the bye will usually go to a team that's not in contention to do anything. So you're not going to get a team that gets a bye win that ultimately pushes them over the edge of a tiebreaker to get into top cut. But when the numbers are a little bit smaller, and we saw this in Little Squid League in the past as well, it's something you can't really do anything about. You can't penalize a team for not playing a game or not having an opponent for them to play. But for the games Trinity did play, beating the Raccoons and Tooniverse, those are some nice wins for them going 4-2 and making top cut as the number 7 seed. Speaking of top cut, let's look at that real quick. I don't want to do like the usual matches of note winners from top cut because, well, it'd all be the same exact stuff. Because the teams that performed really well would be the winners, and there's only 8 teams in here. So let's just highlight a few things real quick. First off, the second biggest surprise of this whole tournament was the Ravenous Raccoons. They came in to top cut as the number 8 seed, beat the number 1 seed Wiggler Ahoy 3-2. Follow that up by losing the Sea Boys 3-1, but then played Persistence in the third place match and beat them 4-1. And I would assume this is Grand Finals was a counter pick, which is nice to see. So I would assume the third place match was the same thing, considering it went to a best of 7 as well. But for the Raccoons, like I said, they finished top 4 out of 100 teams last low ink, and now they're finishing top 3, getting some huge wins against Wiggler Ahoy and Persistence here. So a very nice tournament for the Raccoons. A team that is definitely going to be in the top 5, if not higher, of teams that could win low ink next month. It's just going to be an issue of who all signs up. But if you're beating a team like Persistence, 4-1 in any tournament, then yeah, you could. If you can beat Persistence, you can beat anybody in low ink. So we'll be keeping an eye on the Raccoons in the future here. I said the Raccoons were the second biggest surprise of this tournament. The number 1 biggest surprise of this whole tournament was the Sea Boys. In round 1, beat Evening Chickens 3-2. I mean, they were the number 4 seed. Evening Chickens number 5. Of course, they're supposed to win, but and this is interesting because the Sea Boys and Evening Chickens both have a beta bracket win under their belt. Evening Chickens obviously getting it last month, Sea Boys getting theirs in August. But what's even more interesting is after Sea Boys won beta bracket in August, they disappeared. We haven't seen them outside of scrims. They haven't done any tournaments at all, at least not any tournaments that are on Battlefy. So for 2 months, these guys have been in hiding, and they come out of nowhere. They beat Evening Chickens in round 1. They beat Ravenous Raccoons in round 2, and then Grand Finals happened, and we will get into that in a quick second. Ultimately, they lost to the Grillers, but the Sea Boys, to come out of nowhere, seemingly out of nowhere, even though they are a strong, experienced team, I would not expect them to be this strong and experienced, finishing second place overall in this tournament. Ahead of several teams that I would assume would be better than them. But you know what happens when you make assumptions. You end up with a low ink top 10 that isn't even close to being correct. I guess that's all that's really is to be said about Top Cut. The other matches were West Broadway, Grillers, sweeping Trinity, Persistence, finding a way to lose one game to ITAP. I believe I saw on Twitter that was because ITAP resulted to using Clash Blaster. So good. So ITAP gets one win against Persistence, but it costs them their soul and their dignity. Unfortunately, we will all think less of them going forward. And the West Broadway Grillers beating Persistence 3-1 in round two. This is, before we get into Top Cut, it's so interesting that the Grillers and Persistence, whenever they sign up for the same tournament, they can't avoid each other. I would be curious in the scene what the all-time series is between those two teams. We know they played a lot in Low Ink, but even after the Grillers won Low Ink and Persistence is still stuck in it, they still find ways to meet up in these other tournaments. And I believe it's pretty even. I know Persistence has beaten the Grillers a few times since the Grillers won Low Ink, but the Grillers got a little bit of revenge this tournament, beating them twice. So, interesting result there. But let's get into Top Cut or Grand Finals real quick, and then get on to SAC. Grand Finals. So this was a best of 7. Counter picks were a part of this as well. The Grillers won the first 2. Seaboys won game 3. Grillers won game 4. Then Seaboys won the next 2, I believe, and then the Grillers ultimately put it away. I might be wrong about 5 or 6. I did watch this one from Devi's perspective. I didn't watch it live, but I went back and watched it last night. I know Parias also streamed it from like a casting point of view, from the spectator point of view. I didn't go back and watch that one specifically, mainly because I didn't have time. And if I could only watch it once, I'd rather watch it from the Grillers' perspective, because I am big fans of the Grillers. But if you want a more traditional viewpoint of this Grand Finals, I would suggest going to watch Parias' stream of that, which what I would assume is still up on his Twitch somewhere. But like I said, I didn't watch this one live, but I did like keep an update on it on my phone. I was watching college football at the time. I was just chilling out. I'd been keeping up with the tournament and Swiss rounds, but I took the rest of the time to just kind of relax. But I remember looking at it and thinking, oh, cool, the Guerrillas are up 2-0. And then it felt like an hour later, I looked it up just expecting to see that the tournament was over, and it was still going on. It was like 3-2 at that time, or like 3-3. Like this best of 7 set dragged on. And I remember thinking, like, is this a glitch? Is this set not over yet? What are they doing? Well, here's the issues. First off, counter picks traditionally slow things down a little bit, not significantly like this, but a little bit. The main issue here was so many disconnect issues. Oh my goodness. And it's really unfortunate. The Seaboys DC'd 3 times, not including one DC that happened in lobby that they were given kind of a grace for, but that ultimately cost them 2 games. The first game they lost because of a DC and it was underneath the score, so they had to play it out, and the Grillers came back and won. The second DC happened, allowing them within the time frame for allowing them to do a redo. The third DC, I mean, at that point you can't do a redo, so they had to play it out, and they ended up losing that game by 1 point. So, I mean, and with a set this close, some people might make the argument that, oh, if there wasn't any DC issues, the Seaboys would have won. And to that, I say no, because there's a lot of other what ifs that go into that. Showing up is half the battle. And yeah, DC issues suck, and sometimes they're something you can control, and sometimes they're just flat out not. My internet wasn't working literally an hour ago, and I didn't know if I was going to be doing this podcast or not. That's nothing I could control outside of just hoping that I could replug the router over and over again. But also, for those of you who live in Indiana, you know Xfinity sucks. So sometimes Xfinity's just going to stop working for you, and there's nothing you can do. But if you were to say, if they didn't DC, they could have won. Well, at the same time, you could say, well, if they didn't get this splat, then this other team would have won. There's a lot of what ifs that go into any game of Splatoon ever, and you can't just point at one thing and say, well, if this happened, then the outcome would be different. Of course, duh, but it didn't. So the result is the Grillers get their first win with Devi, and I don't know how to pronounce this name. It looks like Ninja, so I'm just going to stick with that. With Devi and Ninja on their roster, and did it without Toxic or Sam playing at all. So this is the first time that their entire roster now has played in a tournament and gotten a win, which is a really great feeling. I know when you win low ink, you can only do it with 4 players, maybe 5 if you were rotating someone around. But even though the whole team gets a win, if you didn't play in it, you might feel like, it's nice that my team got the win, but I want a piece of this. So it's nice now the entire Griller roster has a tournament win under their belt. And a team that is probably really excited about this upcoming SAC season, which we'll be getting into. For the Sea Boys, regardless of the DC issues, this was a fantastic tournament for them. They kind of established that they are a really strong team. If they come back into low ink, they got to get the internet issues figured out. I don't know what the issue is, but they need to get that stuff figured out, because if they do, they're going to be a really solid team. Possibly a team that could win low ink. I don't know what they've been doing the past 2 months, but it's been working. So hats off to them, and congrats to the Grillers for winning yet another lower level tournament. As I said, this will probably be the last time I cover the Xanadu tournament series. They are trying to transition over to a tournament that caters more to teams in the upper portion of the mid-level, whatever that is. Basically the same kind of teams that Midway caters to, which is great. A big problem we have in this community is if you're in the lower level, you're set because you got so many tournaments that cater just to you. If you're in the lowerish mid-level, you got SAC, which is coming back and is a fantastic tournament. A tournament we really need in this community. What happens when you finish in the top 8 of SAC? Nothing. You're not good enough to take on teams in the open in these open tournaments, and there's nothing for you to win. We see so many teams get top 8 and then in SAC and then immediately disband. So that's why it's nice that Midway is now a thing that kind of caters to some of those teams. Xanadu's trying to look to make their tournament more accessible to those teams as well, which is good. We really need more of these top 8 SAC teams to stick around. So more tournaments kind of catering to them would be awesome. But again, this is a podcast just for lower level teams, so I probably won't be covering it next time, but there's way too many tournaments for me to cover as well. Stargaze isn't the... Stargaze is like one of the gazillion and a half teams that falls into that category as well. There's so many teams that are just... We beat SAC! Now what do we do? Well, you hope Ludi shows up or you disband, basically. Or play in Midway, but we need more stuff like Midway. So, but that's enough yapping around. I'm going to take a quick break to set things up for the SAC interview, and we will be right back with Yeet of SAC, and I guess formerly of Stargaze. But you are watching the Popcast. And the audio is actually on this time. So welcome into the Popcast, the legendary Yeet, formerly of Stargaze, that beat up on my team in the last Ludi season in the third place match, and new member of the SAC staff, Yeet. Welcome in. How are you doing today?
I'm doing great. Thanks for asking. How are you doing?
I'm doing good as well. You know, we asked each other that same question off screen, and
Yes, we did.
we give the
We
same
practiced
answers.
it.
So we're being consistent today. So that's awesome. Um, and now I do want to point out, Yeet is representing all of SAC. So the answers I gave the SAC questions ahead of time. So this isn't something that Yeet is just saying on his own. This is going to be representing all of them as well. Um, so my first question to, I guess, the SAC as a whole, at the end of last season, what was the number one thing that SAC staff thought we need to change this for next season? This isn't something we're proud of.
Yeah. One of the biggest things that really came out of SAC last season was that a lot of the current staff noticed that the time limit during the matches wasn't really enforced as strongly as they wanted it to be. Due to being a mid-level circuit with teams coming from like various parts of the world, they wanted to try and be accommodating as possible when it came to match and round times. Unfortunately, it did cause some issues during a few of the tournaments. So this season, we're aiming to give leeway to the time limit in the first round of every tournament. Then after that, we're going to be keeping a watchful eye on matches to make sure they're progressing, making sure they finish on schedule.
Yeah, that's a fair thing to bring up. I remember playing in low ink. Um, you just have a lot of new teams that, to their credit, just didn't know what the heck they were doing. So it'd be like
Yeah,
10 minutes before they even get into the lobby, which would slow things down for a lot of people. So that's a good thing. Um, do you, as a player yourself from last season, were there Stargaze made more top cuts? I'm assuming. I can't really remember. Do you remember like any specific times when you were a player where it was like, oh, this is really dragging on, or just having like
yeah,
long wait times?
yeah. We didn't start making Top Cut until like halfway through the season. So like I think the first time we made it was the game before All Star game, and then it might have been one or two tournaments after that where we'd made it into a top cut and we were playing against Cataclysm, and we'd made it. I don't think it was set play, but we made it like a game 7, and there was like a ton of DCs that were going on, and I think it ran over like maybe 20 minutes past the time. It got kind of ugly. Um, but that's why I'm hoping that we can start kind of enforcing those match times a little bit faster this season.
Speaking of this season, it was announced that SAC is partnering with GSM, Game Set and Match. Can you explain what all of this partnership will add to the overall SAC experience this season for teams?
Well, this is really exciting for all of us on the staff team. For the past 6 months, when SEC has been relatively quiet, uh, the people on the SEC team at the time, or SEC staff team, uh, they've been like shadowing and working closely with and talking to the organizers and TOs at GSM during the recent events, not only build that strong connection between the staff teams, but to improve our own staff team, like communication as well. Um, with that being said, this also gives the old and new SAC staff an opportunity to discuss how we're going to be handling things such like team registration. We're going to reveal some more information about that soon, but for the competitive teams, rest assured that they're going to be fully supported and promoted in SAC, as well as given opportunities to show their skills in GSM events. Um, this also means we're not only going to be promoting our SAC events as per usual, but we're also going to promote the GSM events as well. Um, Being able to battle teams of all skill levels in GSM events is what allows these teams to improve. Whether you're a new team and getting stomped, or you've been in the scene a while and you're looking to elevate your communication skills, we here at SAC are going to promote a competitive and entertaining experience for everybody. we know GSM is held in high regard in the Splatoon community, and we're aiming to add that credibility with our own team working with them.
Yeah, GSM had the Ink for Pink tournament a few weeks ago. I think they did like the Cabin Fever. I think they were a big part of some of the lands as well back when those
Yeah.
were legal to be had. So that's
Uh,
uh, great. It was interesting to see that you guys partnered with GSM, but I guess it kind of makes sense, and it's good to see you guys are going to be working together uh, to make things better for everyone. Um, this season's going to be a few months shorter than last season. Um, do you have any idea how many total tournaments there are going to be at this point in the SAC circuit?
Currently, we're thinking about 4 to 5 tournaments a season. We've waited to discuss this more in the very, very near future, but there'll still be plenty of competition for all the SAC teams. As for the rotation of tournaments, such as Squid Spawning Grounds, also known as SSG, and Coast to Coast, uh, well, instead of running those 2 tournaments with separate names and formats, we're going to adopt a single name circuit format so that there won't only just be the tournament in group format and tournament formatted in Swiss. It'll just be one or the other. Time wise, we're still going to try and rotate the times every other tournament, but nothing on time is set in stone just yet.
So it's just going to be like SAC tournament, kind of like with Midway, where we see tournament
Yeah,
one,
you're gonna
tournament
you're
two.
gonna see a lot of the changes we've made in SAC. Not a lot of them, but like we're kind of taking a little bit of inspiration from Midway, which is another great tournament series that I think a lot of the teams that do participate in SAC should try to participate in. But we're gonna kind of fix some of our flaws that we had from SAC season 2 and try to find a better way using uh, some Midway guidelines.
Okay, so you're saying 4 to 5 tourneys, whereas last season it was like what 8 to 10
Yeah,
or
somewhere
something
around there.
like that. So
Yeah.
the idea is to cut down and make the season about as half as long. Are we still gonna? Do you think it's still gonna be like every other week, like bi-weekly, or is it gonna be possibly more spread out than that?
Um, I'm not entirely sure,
Right.
but if I was going to guess as somebody looking on from the outside, it would probably be a bi-weekly tournament thing.
Uh, what about an all-star game? Do we think that's gonna return?
Um, Without a doubt, yeah. The All-Star game is going to return. Um, it's always been a really massive highlight during the SAC season, and we don't really see it going anywhere anytime soon. It's always been favored by SAC fans and players alike because it allows those players who've never played together on the same team to meet and greet with their fellow competitors. Speaking as somebody who played in it last season, um, I was on a team with Lewis from Conversion 2, and I still think we're pretty good friends at this point.
Yeah. The first SAC tournament all-star game, a teammate of mine, Tofu, got to actually play with Bagel, which is
Wow.
which was an experience that was really rewarding for him, and obviously his team won.
Yeah.
but but yeah, that being able to mix it up with other players in the is always a good thing. Has there been any talk about what the format will be for deciding who gets to play in the All-Star match? Is it going to be like another Twitter poll or something different?
So what we're going to do is, how the All-Star game was kind of just middle of the season.
Yes.
We're going to move it to after, that season's done, but before the finals. So what we're going to do is we're going to take the top 16 teams, and then I think it's going to be the polls, and we're going to do 4 players per team, and then people can select the top 2 players of each team to qualify for it. Um, that's kind of what we have in mind for now, but that's all I can really say about it.
Okay, so it does sound like it's going to change a little bit, which
Yeah.
is Which
It's
is
still going to be the All-Star game.
right. Uh, I kind of listed off at the start of this episode a lot of tournaments that have been going on, and since one of the things SAC mentioned in the announcement post is that they don't want to overlap with things like GSM or Low Inc or Midway. But since the last SAC season ended in the middle of the summer, a lot of newer mom and pop tournaments have kind of formed out of seemingly nowhere. Little Squid League exists, the Xanadu Tournament Series, Ash Cup, the Minnow Cup, just to name a few. So I know it's going to be SAC's intent to not overlap with these other tournaments. But do you feel like some form of overlap is going to be unavoidable at this point, just because of how many
Um,
tournaments exist now?
Ultimately, yeah. That's just kind of like a hard truth of it. However, our main focus is to avoid those tournaments that have like some of the really big names, such as our partners at GSM, Endgame TV, and even Nintendo. We're gonna 100% avoid overlapping with Low Inc. because a lot of the teams that are in SAC participate in Low Inc. and vice versa. And we've talked with the Low Inc. staff about it in the past as well.
Uh, yeah, and I mean that's just kind of the nature of the beast. there's
Yeah,
there's just so much stuff going, which is a good thing.
it is.
Competition
Yeah,
is a good thing for sure, but uh, it is what it is. Last season SIC used a ranking system that was updated after each tourney, or basically bi-weekly. This time you said you're switching to a point system, much like what we would see with Midway. Can you explain how the system is different from the one used last season?
okay. So again, this is like what I was talking about before, where we're kind of adopting some of the things from Midway because SAC and Midway do share staff members. Not all of them, but like there's a few that are in both, myself included, actually. But last season, the SAC rankings were based on a committee, and it quickly became apparent that the system might be a little flawed, mainly due to a possible bias choice. However, despite this, we didn't really get any major complaints throughout the season, but instead they kind of found internal hiccups that would have made switching back to a point system seem like a great thing. In the meeting the staff had then, they went back and forth, kind of discussing between Midway and GSM point systems. So ultimately, our staff members who would be seeding the tournaments are more comfortable with the Midway point system. Like Roundy is the one that actually made it, and they saw a lot of success with it through Midway season one. So we thought it'd be a great system to implement. Basically, after every tournament, there's going to be a report of what everybody's score was from that week's tournament and the overall rankings. So it'll be similar to season one, which had the point system, but nothing like season two's committee.
Right. The season two seemed like it was more just the who passed the eyeball test, which I guess is fair. I personally I always thought the rankings last season were they were fine. I mean, I didn't
Yeah,
see any particular issue with it. I mean, I always thought my team was underseeded, but at the same time, so did everybody else because
yeah,
everybody's biased. But so I guess the point system is just to kind of make it more so predictable as to what the rankings are going to be, just
yeah.
based off of solely tournament performance like that. I didn't send you this ahead of time, so I don't you might tell me you don't know yet, but is it basically going to be top 8 moves on to grand finals again like we saw in the past?
You mean like top cuts for individual tournaments or for
uh
finals?
for grand finals of the whole season.
Yeah, it's I pretty sure it's gonna be top eight. Um, yeah, it's top eight, I believe.
Okay, that
I
would.
could be wrong, but 99% sure, and if not, I will make sure to correct myself on Twitter.
This is a yeet guarantee right here. We're having a top 8 grand finals. You heard it live. Uh, so let's talk about team eligibility because that's going to be a big topic. Is who's going to be allowed to play in this? Uh, Ludi divisions haven't been updated since April, and likely won't be updated till mid-January. Um, so Ludi divs aren't going to be there to kind of help you guys determine who's Div 3 and below. And also there's been like 100 new teams that have formed since then that are technically divless. So, like, how will SAC determine who is eligible for the upcoming season when current Ludi divs are just no longer close to being accurate anymore?
Despite Ludi divs not being updated for a pretty long time, unfortunately, with the new influx of teams, SAC is still going to uphold their skill cap. Um, the jury's still out on which one we want to use this season. Actually, wait, no, I can't say that. For the most part, the SAC rules of the past regarding Ludi will still stand. And sorry, I'm blanking for a second.
It sounds like you guys are still trying to figure out
Yeah,
how
we're
you're going to go
still.
about it.
I do have a lot of trust in our team, where like they can kind of determine like who they think is eligible and not or not. Like we can. I think I'm just saying this not as like a member of staff, but as myself. Um, I think that the staff can kind of, if we don't get a Ludi, I still think that thanks to like all these smaller tournaments that are coming out, and like like the Xanadu series, as you said before, I think we can kind of base the performance on like how they've been doing there and like some of the other tournaments too, and can just kind of like try to see if we think that they're eligible or not.
So the mindset is going to be just to get teams that are Div 3 and below into this.
Yeah,
Okay.
we're just gonna make sure that everybody stays underneath our skill cap.
Right. Um so in the past there's been some controversy where teams where Ludi will just kind of show up in the middle of SAC like it always does, and Ludi will take like the top 4 teams that are currently in SAC and give them a Div 2, which in theory would mean they would be ineligible for SAC, but because they started off the season underneath the skill cap, they were able to kind of finish out the season. Do you know if that's if Ludi were to show up again and current teams in SAC were given another Div 2 that they would be allowed to finish out the season?
Yeah, there's definitely a bit of controversy regarding being ranked kind of Div 2 in the middle of the season. We find it fair here at SAC to let a team finish out the season if they place Div 2. They can't just participate after the season. Eligibility is still like another story, because due to our new partnership with GSM, it'll actually be easier than ever to find out who's eligible and who's banned, kind of seeing that we'll have access not only TOs and organizers from GSM to cross-reference players for us. We can also use the database that Splat Safety has in mind for GSM events, which we can also use to find banned teams and players.
Last question here is I'm just going to let you plug anything that you need to plug for SAC because I really appreciate you taking the time to come on here. Are you guys still taking staff applications? And if so, where can people find that kind of information?
So as of right now, I believe that we still have our staff application still open. And if you want to find it, you can just go to our Twitter account, which should be pretty easy to find on Twitter at Splatoon AC. I think I don't really have too much to plug in besides kind of, I highly suggest kind of playing in a lot of these tournaments before coming into SAC. It'll definitely help us when trying to seed. And also kind of make sure that our community kind of like stays strong. We want to see as many people participate in these tournaments as they can, and we want to see kind of everybody find that level of improvement that they're hoping to get.
Yeah, like I mentioned before, I feel like SAC is a very important tournament for our community, especially for teams that I normally talk about that are looking to take the next step. SAC is definitely established as the next step for that. So Yeet, I appreciate you coming on and giving us some more information about this season. I know my team is excited about it. I know a lot of other people are as well. So I appreciate you taking the time out of your day to come on and answer some questions for me. That's great.
Yeah, of course, anytime.
All right, and I'm gonna let you go now. And that was Yeet of the SAC staff. I guess the one question I had that I didn't know how they were going to answer would be the eligibility thing, and it seems like they don't really have an answer for that either, which is fine because they just announced it last week, and there's still 2.5 months basically to figure that out. But I feel like this is going to be a difficult thing for them to do because they don't have Ludi to fall back on. They're basically going to have to come up with Ludi divs themselves for especially all these diffless teams and be like, we think these guys are div 3. But, Yeet said he felt confident in the people that were part of that. I think I agree with that as well, especially with this. He mentioned at the end there, GSM is a part of the partnership that's going to help them out cross-check all these players to do eligibility checks and things like that. So it's not just going to be just the team of SAC figuring stuff out. They're going to have a lot of help in the community to kind of determine who's going to be eligible and who's not. And honestly, I kind of hope Ludi doesn't come back before this upcoming SAC season, because this seems like it could be a good shift for us, a shift away from using as a Ludi as a crutch to determine everything in this community. So if our TOs are starting to determine on their own which team should be eligible and which team shouldn't without having to use a Ludi to fall back on, I feel like that's just going to make everything better and more accurate as we go forward as a community. And that's, I could probably rant about ranking teams and eligibility again forever, but we've reached the end here of the Popcast episode. Who am I going to rate here? What if I raid somebody new? Let's just find somebody new and just raid them. Splatoon 2. Ye Noctis. Let's raid this person, see what happens. If this person turns out to be like a completely horrible human being, I apologize in advance, but I have no idea. Hey, if you'd like to be a part of the podcast in any way, feel free to reach out to me on Twitter at Mr_Popgun, Discord Popgun #5882, Twitch at Popgun25, YouTube at 25Popgun. I no longer upload these things. I no longer keep them on Twitch. All the replay or VODs are on my YouTube page. So if you're watching this not live, you're probably watching it there. Let's go raid this rando. Make sure you go vote tomorrow if you're eligible to do so, and you get a nice sticker to put on your bald head. You have to wear a mask, so make sure you do that. Don't get sick tomorrow, guys. And stay safe throughout this week. I don't know what's going to happen this week. Just stay safe. Hopefully it's not as crazy as everyone's predicting.